Think Tank, Think Tank, Think Tank. Hey, it's Brian here, one half of the Think Tank guys. And at the beginning of 2018, when I'm recording this, this topic that I'm going to talk about today, Bitcoin, is just so hot. It's been hot for, at least a year and a half, 2 years. And I have a handful of clients that invest in Bitcoin, and some have used their policy values like I'm about to teach you today. And we've had the conversations which we're about to get into today because I am not an expert on Bitcoin. You can check 1,000 websites on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is this blockchain technology that is used for so many different things, but it has a monetary value to it. It's potentially being used as currency. I'll pull up one of the sites that I was looking at here. Just to kind of track, good old Google and good old Wikipedia, as trusty as they can be. It was nice because it summarized where Bitcoin has been. Here, this thing is just updating. It summarized where Bitcoin started back in early 2000s and its value to where it is today. Where it was. Check this out. Where it was early in December 17.9, where it was late in December 13.8, and where it started, back in less than a penny. So this whole phenomenon has been incredible, but for those who know how to and are comfortable with it and know how to invest in it and use their Bitcoin wallet, there's a lot of stuff about that online, and then cycle dollars in, and who've been successful at pulling dollars out, they are investing. Now, we can argue that there's some speculation involved, and even with the investors that I know that invest in Bitcoin and have invested in Bitcoin, they acknowledge to some capacity it's speculation on appreciation, but they've been successful with it. So I wanted to kind of just talk through this a little bit in terms of if you were to invest in Bitcoin, using your policy values to leverage it into something like we've talked about, and a lot of our clients already understand, then let's just dig into this thing. So, and I'm also, just on a side note too, I'm also going to kind of just ignore for today's talk any sort of tax conversation, right? Because number one, I'm not a CPA. But number two, as I understand, this was just a recent article on CNBC about the taxation of Bitcoin. They're taxing it as capital gains. So keep in mind, you would have to, where's it at? Yeah, capital gains, long-term gain, short-term gain. You'll just have to keep, your eyes on your individual situation with taxes. But Bitcoin, wouldn't we all, now this is just tongue-in-cheek, wouldn't we all want to buy a Bitcoin at $1? I'm going to bring this over here in a second. Wouldn't we all have wanted to buy a Bitcoin at $1 and have it be worth 17.9 like it was in December for the equivalent of a $1,789,000 rate of return? Now that's pure rate of return, not necessarily an annual rate of return, but even in the course of that 1 year, you can see what some folks were actually getting. Let's just say that someone bought at $750 in January 2014, and they sold, what is that? $750 in 14, 750. Let's say that they turn around and they sell at, what was that? 2014? Yeah, $750 in 14, 14, 15, 16. End of 17, let's say 4 years. Let's say at the end of 17, they sell at 17.9. That's 121% return, right? If we look at it annually. And some folks, they were buying it back at $500 and offloading it even at January's price of 13.8. I'll call it 13.8. Seeing some crazy returns here, right? So how can you use a policy? How can we use our policy if we were to invest in this effectively to buy Bitcoin? Well, you would need to understand the Bitcoin mechanics. You need to understand how to use a Bit wallet or an online cryptocurrency wallet and stuff like that. And Bitcoin's not the only cryptocurrency, but effectively, you have your policy cash values. And here's your online wallet. And then over here is the Bitcoin, right? So basically we would borrow against our policy. We'd move that money into the wallet. Remember, our money continues to grow here. Move that into the wallet and use the wallet to effectively purchase Bitcoin. And then whatever that value goes up or down to, if it goes up, well, then effectively what we do is we sell it off, bring cash back into the wallet, and then we can cycle some of that cash back into our policy and keep the rest. Why would we cycle it back into our policy? Well, for those of you who understand how the policy works, we're leveraging against the policy as it continues to grow uninterrupted without taxes, and leverage that into the wallet where we can buy Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin can be used to basically satisfy the loan. Now, the problem that we end up having here, and this is an interesting think tank thought or an interesting think tank conversation, is that you talk to a lot of folks who have watched the Bitcoin grow. Let me actually pull this chart over again. People have watched Bitcoin grow and they see this and they think this thing is just only going to go up, right? So they just think, oh, well, here's Bitcoin today and it's only going to go up. Now, there's a lot of different conversation points about that, but here's what I want to leave us with in and around Bitcoin. What about how could we actually use our policy to get an infinite return? What do I mean by that? Well, for folks who are familiar with how to calculate rates of return, and folks are familiar with especially real estate, because this kind of circles around acquiring real estate, getting your money back out, and then having infinite return inside properties and stuff like that. If we were to invest I'll just say $20,000. I have some clients that have invested some money in Bitcoin, and we move it into Bitcoin, whatever that Bitcoin's worth. And then that Bitcoin in our account grows in value to, say, $200,000, right? We can turn around and we can say, okay, over the course of time, let's just assume that was 1 year. Over the course of time, we can assume our $20,000 turned into $200,000. We had a 900% return. I mean, that's just crushing it, smashing it. We're just super excited. We're also kind of worried about what happens if it goes from $17,000 down to $14,000 and our $200,000 turns into $140,000. And there's also a piece in the minds of these folks that says, I don't know if this is going to happen or not. I'm not crying chicken little the sky is falling, but what if that goes down to zero? Well, then of course we've lost the 20 grand. So the conversation I want you to have, or at least contemplate, is what if now that we've made money, whatever that amount is, I'll go back up to $200,000. I'll go back up to the 200. What if we've made money and then we've used in this case, for example, whether you've used your policy or not, whether it's just cash, we pull this money back out. So effectively now that we have 200 grand, we pull our 20 grand back out. So now we have our principal back in our hands. Doesn't help that that's got to turn that back into. What if we pull that back out? Everybody's always, there's retirees understand this, and good investors always are kind of contemplating, how can I cycle my dollars? What if we pull our principal back out and now we have an account, we have our money back. Now this account is worth 180, again, taxes aside. And whatever that 180 does, we have no money in the deal, right? So what if I have $0 in the deal because I pulled my principal back out and I have account worth $180,000? Right? This says error because it's an infinite rate of return. Infinite return. So now if that 180 goes back up to 200, it's an infinite return on our original investable dollars because we have those dollars back out. So actually now, if anything, that goes up to 250, infinite return because you pulled your principal back out. If it drops down to 100, yeah, that stinks, but it's not a negative return on your principal because you pulled your principal back out. So if anything, we get our infinite return plus 4 to 5% in our policy. I know that's not sexy when we're looking at 900% return, right? But our principal plus principal is protected because it's back here inside the policy, right? So for those of you actively investing in Bitcoin, for those of you who use your policy to invest in Bitcoin, for those of you who are even contemplating investing in Bitcoin, I think you all understand that there's a lot of speculative nature to it. But when it comes down to being strategic about using your cash, using your capital, moving it into something where you can make money, but then actually returning your principal back, there's a lot of power to just thinking differently as opposed to letting everything ride, which is completely a gambling term. Let it ride. Pull your principal back off the table, and then let's just see what this investment can do. And if there's any way you can exert control on your Bitcoin, I don't know if you can or not. I don't know if you can do options. I don't know if there's puts. I don't know if there's things like that. By all means, exert control. I don't know if you can cash flow off of Bitcoin. I've heard of some wallets that actually offer lending on Bitcoin where you can cash flow from it. Maybe there's ways to invest there. But bottom line, if you think more strategically about pulling your principal back after you've earned, then you don't have to worry about losing money, right? Because you have your principal back and you can go and invest in something else or invest in a different crypto or whatever. So think tankers, if this prompts any conversation, we can definitely go down the road of this a little further. And if any of our clients or any of our community members have questions about this, feel free to reach out to Eric and I. In the meantime, whether Bitcoin's at 17.9 or whether Bitcoin's at 13.8 or whether Bitcoin's at $10,000, here's to your prosperity.